Hi, everybody. When we speak about a culture of equality at Accenture, it's very clear that you cannot realize this without some essential building blocks. As we celebrate the Pride Month, we thought it would be good to use this time of celebrations to talk to some of India's change makers on what they see as building blocks of equality, both at work and outside, and how we can translate these into actions. I have with me Dr. Akai Padmashali, who founded Vondade, which aims to create awareness about sexuality, sexual diversity, and the right to choose one's sexual orientation. In 2014, she was invited to talk at the International Bar Association held at Tokyo about the legal rights of sexual minorities. A very warm welcome.
Thank you.
I also have with me Ms. Vandana Suri, founder of Taxi, and this is a cab service for women, and she is a strong advocate of women at work.
Yes.
Very, very warm welcome.
Thank you.
And we have Ms. Rashi Vidyasagar, who works with White Swan Foundation, that is actively involved in helping people across communities overcome challenges in their way and join the corporate workforce. Yes. She has worked with communities extensively with multiple state governments to set up programs that tackle violence against women.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Very, very warm welcome. And I'm going to come straight to you, Dr. Akai. So growing up, your family raised you in the way they believed a boy should be. And while you always identified yourself as a female, what was the toughest thing about your quest for equality?
I think it is the social construct where my parents was really wanting to practice, because my father belongs to the dominant Hindu religion and the backward classes community. He was also working with defense, with the aeronautical development establishment. He was always worried about his dignity, his prestige. My mother was housewife and a very big family that I come from, joint family. I think the expectation of my parents was, though I was born with penis as a male child, so much of celebrations at house, so much of expectations from me as a boy, as a man. That was their notionized expectation. When growing around 5, 6, 7, 8 years, when you're realizing that I'm not a boy, I'm a girl, expressing my feminine character within 4 walls, accepting the way I am within the 4 walls, stealing slippers, my mother's bra, sari, you are experiencing a woman as the way you are enjoying it. So many times family members saw it and say that no, it is highly impossible, because you are born a male, you have to behave like a man. And that sort of notionized patriarchal the thing is putting you so much of pressure. You are really in a situation you can't even express and talk to your siblings, your parents, at least your friends. No, and always you're feeling alone. Then where do you go? To go back to my example where I did not have the space to express my feminine character, but when there was no one at house, I was experiencing this feminine character and enjoying the whole way, applying lipstick, like wearing towel as my hair and wearing my mother's sari, and I'm just observing how she wears sari. All these things, stealing my my sister's slipper, trying to catwalk and do all the stuff. When there was so much of restriction not to do that or behave like that, my father and my mother, they poured hot water on my legs not to be a girl anymore. And the environment became so conducive. Then I tried to attempt suicide twice at the age of 12 and 13. And at the age of 13, when I tried for second attempt, then I decided why I should die. I'm perfect and you're not perfect. That came to my mind. At the age of 16, I told my brother, saying that I'm no more a boy, I'm a girl. And the man was very bit confused. No, you're born biologically with sex and you are saying you're a woman, and how do I accept it? I think it was a sort of lack of awareness, lack of education on sex, psychology, gender, expression, all this stuff. But how do you educate them? I think I was in a cage. I was in a cage between 7 to 16 years when I saw my own people in the streets at Corporation Circle in Bangalore. Then I found they are my real family. They are my so-called biological family. I think that came to my mind when I went and spoke to them. I felt so inclusive. I felt so happy. But leading in a family or being in a family which is very conservative and experiencing your feminine or womanhood, it was really challenging. And today it's really an unforgettable situation where many people who come to me about this agenda or this issue, I always guide them not to die, just face it.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. And I'll come back to you shortly. Ms. Vandana, your business taxi hires women as drivers.
Yes,
All right. And it is a profession dominated by women.
absolutely. No,
So-
it's a profession dominated
Dominated by men.
men.
I'm so
but
sorry.
My
Yeah,
company
it's a-
is dominated
yeah.
by women.
So, what does equality mean to you and your employees?
Equality means for my employees, first of all, these women come from very underprivileged segments. They've never sat in a car, so they don't know where to put the key, right? They don't know how to open the door of a car. They've always been secluded that this is a guy's job. The first level of equality comes right there, that I am being given to access, I'm being given access to drive a vehicle which is technically driven by men in their worlds. So that's the first level. The fact that they never grew up thinking that they'll take driving as a career. Never. So they were born thinking that I'm going to be a maid, I'm going to be a cook, I'm going to be a slave. They had all these kinds of notions. Most of them are not even educated. They're third standard pass. So for them today, standing up in society, learning to drive as professionally as a guy, people watching them on the road, you're making a point, that's equality. For them, driving into a wedding, there was a wedding last night in one of their homes, and this lady says, I need the car because I want to go there. And the kind of attention she gets when she drives a car into a whole full-fledged wedding of her own relatives and her own circle, I think that's equality for them. They are seriously breaking the barriers.
Thank you. And Rashi,
Yes.
White Swan Foundation, you work also to raise a lot of awareness about mental health
Yeah.
issues. And it is, I personally know, a much ignored topic in the country. What does equality mean for someone who has mental health challenges?
So I think there is a lot of conversation about mental health. Mental health is everywhere. So we could have a mental illness, or somebody could be going through distress due to a personal situation. It could be divorce, it could be death in the family, or even something positive as changing a city, getting a promotion. In these times, it is very important that people have support. So equality in the workspace would mean support, would mean a level of empathy that is given. We all know that the sick leave as a component exists for a lot of employees, at least who are formally employed. To include mental health in that. I'm not saying that every employee needs a separate mental health leave, but to say that, can I email my boss and say, hey, I'm feeling a little low today on energy, can I take off, or can I work from home today? I'm feeling extremely anxious to get ready, or to face the commute, or to face my colleagues. Can I work from home? I think I'm capable. To not equate mental illness with productivity, or lack of productivity actually, is what is equality, mainly at the workforce. Yeah.
Thank you. And I must share with you, we play a little game in our mental health workshops. We say, how many of you went to a doctor? How many of you had medicines last year? And how many of you took a sick day off? And everybody's hands would go up.
Yeah.
And then you would say, how many of you went to a mental health professional? How many of you took medicines prescribed? And how many of you took a mental health day off? And then, you can see the palpable change in
Absolutely.
the tension in the room. And I think the moral of the story is not really to debrief on how many hands went up or not. And I think that's very telling, the stigma associated with it. And I think all you're saying is really, how do you make it okay to talk about it?
Exactly. And that's the shift in culture that we need.
Yeah. So some of the things that I'm hearing from you is, I heard from you, it's, when you talk about equality, it's about beliefs, biases, dealing with awareness, ignorance. What I heard from you is, how do you challenge role stereotypes? How do you challenge the paradigm of gender and what's expected from gender?
Yeah.
As World Health Organization defines it. And you're really talking about, how do I know what causes you distress?
Yes.
How do I know what support is required by you, and how do I really make it okay?
Yeah.
Excellent. So thank you. I think great set of building blocks for us to work off.
Yeah.
I have a question, and I'm going to start with you, Rashi, this time. How can we put in place necessary elements to create an empowering work environment where, so you talked about this support, right? How do I extend this support where employees are free to come out with their choices?
So I think a lot, like you said, these mental health workshops. So we did a small workplace survey, and we said, how do you know your workplace? First, does your workplace talk about mental health or not? And then secondly, we asked, how do you know that it is positive or not? And a lot of people said that we do have workplace workshops, but my CEO also says things like depression is boredom. And I think it starts from there. To have a line of communication that kind of is equal to everyone in the organization. So you take your managers, you take your CEOs, you take your managing directors, everybody needs to speak the same language of empathy as the person who is going for the workshop. It's not just one or two people, and who generally goes for these workshops? It's mid-management. It's not always the people on top, because there is no tension over there, there's no problems over there, or the problems there cannot be solved by one workshop. But the line that you speak is so important for everybody. To say, it's okay, take a day off. It's, hey, why is that, like we were talking before we started, why is your shirt unironed today when every other day it's ironed? Is everything okay? The answer could be, I woke up really late today, which is fine. Or the answer could be, I couldn't get myself to iron my shirt today. If everyone is, and if that answer is acceptable to your boss, the people will tell you that. So I think it starts also with talking about your own struggles. Are you talking about what you found difficult in your life? Are you talking, because we have these, failures, just the first step. And it's not okay to fail, how startups are doing now, and everyone's getting these amazing. So stress is also glorified. I didn't go home till 4 a.m. last night. A lot of workplaces have that kind of culture. Is that glorified? Is a question that we need to ask.
Excellent. Thank you.
Yeah.
And I must, as an anecdote, since we said we'll make this conversation, one of my, as much as people can make fun of me for talking about iron shirts, one of the iron shirts conversation actually led me to noticing somebody hadn't washed their shirt and they were repeatedly wearing it and it was getting soiled. And what that person, and I said, do you have to wash your shirt, right? And he just couldn't get himself to do it. And one thing led to another. A few days later, I figured out he was dealing with depression from his dad remarrying within a year of his mom passing away. And so it's, thank you so much. And it just brought back a very deep memory for me. Vandana, support elements at the workplace.
I think the way we've designed the workplaces for my girls first, that was what we broke in. If you look at a situation where women cabbies, you barely see them along. You don't see them around. And I think the biggest, so I'm a cabbie myself. So I think it was important for me to become a cabbie myself to really understand what is the undercurrent. I can't be sitting here and looking here. On the other hand, we realized that why there were no women cabbies around was the fact that this was not a safe environment for them. They didn't know where they were going to get up and end at. They didn't know who am I going to drive, so how safe am I? They didn't know what time they'd be going home, right? So for a woman, her whole mind, wherever she is, in whichever career she is, one set of her mind is back home with the family as a caregiver, right? Now, when you're so daunted as to where am I going to be today, and I might start at this location and end up 40 kilometers away, how do I reach home? So we realized that first we had to make an ecosystem which was conducive for her. That is where we took a call that she will drive only women and children. So we said, okay, your safety is guaranteed, so you're not feeling unsafe. Again, why we did not venture into a retail cab category per se was to help her manage time. So today she drives kids. She knows I go 7 to 8, I go 8 to 9. I have time in between to manage my home. Her business that we pick up is very locally picked up around where she is. Like I said, we have more demand then supply. So we can cherry pick what suits her location, so she is able to reach back home in between and manage. So there's a sick child at home, she reaches home. This kind of flexibility. The third bit is that we've capitalized on motherhood. That's our DNA, right? That's what we're born with. She's driving kids. She's singing lullabies in the car. It's such a acceptable and wanted place for her. She's not a driver. She's a caretaker out there, and she's actually freaking out. So that's where that thing about coming to work, if I change their schedule, right? Okay, you've done this drive for this month. Next month you go, they start crying. They're like, hello, my kids. I said, hello, they're not your kids. They're the client's kids. But that's how attached they are to the work.
Emotionally bound.
So it had to be making it comfortable for her first. Only then there is the next level of next month.
So I liked how you said you've capitalized on motherhood.
Yes.
You're essentially
Yes.
leaving us with a big message saying, play to what somebody will enjoy doing,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
Rather than force-fitting them to what you want them to do.
Yeah.
Beautiful example. Thank you. I've written that down, capitalizing motherhood. Dr. Akai, what are some of the supporting infrastructure? How do you make your ecosystem supporting of what you're trying to do?
I think that is quite challenging because of your identity, because of your existence, because of your social stigma, because of the way you carry yourself, and because of your profession that you does. Majority of us who are indulged in sex work and begging, which is so-called stigmatized profession, I think in that way I shall say that there is no any sort of ecosystem support that for the community itself, But we are really in a search, in an open forum of seeking people who can support this process, If you go back to the whole history, that how the section was marginalized, how it was oppressed, how it was, it was judged by the notions of patriarchy. Why I'm emphasizing patriarchy? Because that's the main root cause of judging people's identity, where I'm not for here to judge people's identity, and we as a section who are being oppressed, socially excluded because of your gender and sexuality. I think the movement, since more than 50 years, struggling for justice, talking about freedom, talking about acceptance, talking about love, talking about support system. I think these are the basic needs that like common human being is required. If we talk about equality, and what is equality? Equality is not about between your biologically born sex. It's about how do you understand each one's identity and how do you accept and respect. It's all about equality. I think I'm not here to judge or decide one's identity. I think if you're judging, I need to question by who are you to judge my identity. Same thing, it's not about your power, like how do you also talk about decentralization of power in context to the gender and sexuality is concerned. I think the community itself, because you are a vulnerable section and you are denied from many, many options, opportunities, spaces, everything, and you are standing as a lone person. I think recent the Supreme Court verdict in 2014 on recognizing transgender community are equal citizens before the Constitution. I think now the systems are really opening, including the state. State means the government, the federal or the state governments, the family institutions, your friends, your education institution, your employment spaces, multinational companies, corporate sector. I think now people are really coming forward to understand what is this. And the basic information or education is what is sex, what is gender, and what is sexuality. If these 3 or 4 terminology which is really unspoken, you cannot bring any sort of change. If a teacher who is not open to this basic information, and how does she educate their own kids? I think the system itself that we are now rebuilding the whole movement, rebuilding the whole country. It's not about when human species was born. It is about how do you redefine, what is system and what exactly this community wants. That is my community wants, and we are being denied from many, many other spaces and opportunities, and we are still looking for that. If that's so, I think through this forum, I want to request and urge to support people to to be part of this huge family. For that, whatever word that you use, ecosystem or system in support, or for solidarity, whatever.
Sure. No, thank you. I just, for our own audiences who are listening, I do want to capture some of the things that you've just shared, and I've picked it up. You started by talking about, is everybody speaking the same language?
Yeah.
Are you talking about it at all in the workplace? You're saying, are you glorifying the wrong things?
Yes.
Or are you celebrating the right things? How much is it top down?
Yeah.
And, is it only, and I smile because is it only the middle management that's going into a workshop? Vandana, I learned from you, making it safe, making it predictable, playing to strengths, capitalizing motherhood. And I think, Dr. Akai, what you really said is, in the space that you're working in, it all starts with basic education. Everything, the biggest thing I'm taking away is, even for us, at Accenture, and I agree with you. I almost see it happening, right? If you don't talk about what sexuality, what is, gender identity, and you don't do the basic education for what is LGBT, then, that really is, basic education is the building block to go further. Fantastic. I'm going to move us and going to talk a little bit about, as I personally reflect on equality, I think no matter whether you talk about women, whether you talk about ethnicity, whether you talk about a disability or being differently able, or we talk about sexual orientation and gender identity, it all boils down, eventually inclusion all boils down to inclusion, which is exactly what you said. It's about accepting, respecting another person. But we all deal with subconscious, conscious and unconscious biases.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get straight to the subject of conscious and unconscious biases. And, Ms. Vandana, I want to start with you. You work with a different workforce. There are conscious, unconscious biases that you had to work through to be an inclusive employer.
Okay.
So what were some of those?
I think I had biases from the client's point rather than from the workforce point. One of them was always dealing with the fact that women are not good drivers. I'm like, hands on, come on, give me a challenge to park and you'll just see what I'm talking about.
Okay.
Right? So that's, I think initially we faced that about a month or so when we started out. Touch wood, I haven't faced this in the last 4 years after that, but yes, we did. The other bias that we did face was from the girls themselves. They could not in their wildest dreams think that, could I do this? Some of them are very short, they're 4 feet, 5 inches, and they're like, my leg will reach the clutch or not, right? So that, I think the biggest bias which the women faced was their own capacity. Can I do this? Because they've always been taught that you can only do this and you can't do that. It's ingrained in their head. And that was it had to be broken, like really broken down.
Thank you. I'll come back to that. Dr. Akai, what do you feel is one of the biggest challenges that should be made, the biggest change that should be made in our education system to help preventing biases from corrupting young minds?
According to me, the system should not change. I think the way of teaching the issues which is unspoken. If you ask my opinion on formal education, I'm not for formal education. And what is formal education? I think education, the way we speak, the way we are looking, are talking issue which is really unspoken, is a sort of education. So I strongly support the movement of informal education. Yeah. I think it's not about the academics. You take your book, you go through what exactly 5 to 10 pages have written, and you teach. It's not that. With that process, how many of you have really changed?
Yeah.
Or for inclusive world, I think with that current education system, we are still marginalized. We are still facing so much of harassment and violence and violations. And is it because of a formal education? I need to question back what is formal education. But according to me, I think systems is secondary, but how do you ensure that people who are educators or who are spectators or people taking the responsibility of educating other kids or any world is concerned, ensuring that what is a society according to you. If you think the larger vision of society, then you'll definitely think about the importance of this education.
So why should education be just a degree, right?
Exactly.
I mean, my girls are like 3rd, 4th standard pass. They can drive better than quite a few of the educated women out there who can't drive. So what has a degree got to do? As long as you're able to deliver what you're taken a work for, you have the necessary life skill. I think that is education. Beyond all the degrees, I mean, it's, I don't think that degree holds that kind of a value anymore.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe this is a little bit of a disagreement or more of a consolidation. You can look at it each way. I think I do agree that degree means very little in a lot of, but what happens when we think of a lot of marginalized people, whether it is people from poor backgrounds or people from sexual minorities or people from any kind of diverse backgrounds, very often the pathway to academics is very, very complicated for such people. So we never hear real voices. So you will have somebody like me who is upper caste, upper class, has had all privilege in the world, who will research on a marginalized community.
Yeah.
And I will tell you what is the best thing for the government or anyone else to do for this marginalized community because I did a 4-year research. But a person who's lived that life for 20 years has no say in the policy making or in the educational system, which is the problem. So yes, obviously the degree has very little to do with it, but the path to research, the path to giving these policy making, like how can I make something like taxi? Because I come from, like you said, I worked with multiple governments. So I believe that governments are the ultimate, have the responsibility of making everything right. And everyone should advocate for their rights from governments and from policy bodies. Why can't something like taxi be made available for a government agency? Why can't the government sponsor women to learn driving so that a woman like me also finds it easier to find cabs on the road, which is driven by women?
And I've written it down as a life skill.
Yeah.
You know, I think the minute we say, it's very interesting, the paradigm of education immediately is one of formal education.
Yes.
Even amongst the 4 of us as we are talking about it.
Yeah.
And I think what each one of us is actually saying is, with or without formal education, life skill, building life skills and investing in educating yourself on life skills is key.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Rashi, I'm going to keep the conversation with you.
Yes.
So what are some of the positive actions employers can take to ensure that we mitigate bias against people who face mental health issues?
So one of the biggest challenges that society in general faces with mental illness is that of myths. A lot of us have what I call as wrong knowledge because we all think we know the best. It's not what is the truth. So like for example, we would want somebody who's depressed to just get up and do exercise.
Yep.
It's not wrong because exercise does help depression, but maybe at that point that person doesn't need it. We all want to be experts. We all think that we're the experts on mental health, mental illness and everything. Unless the person has something extremely severe, like they're hearing voices, then you go to a Baba. But a psychiatrist, psychologist is not available. So what we need to do is, I think the most positive thing is to look at it as any other illness. For all of us to go back and think of that one person that we know who has been feeling low. You know, we all have that friend who keeps cancelling on us. So to ask and say, hey, you know, you've been cancelling. Is everything okay? You've not met me in this long. Are you sure you don't need help? We all have friends who go for therapy. Therapy did not be a joke. The psychiatrist is not a loony bin. Everyone in society can do is talk about mental health every single day in some way or form.
When we are not able to acknowledge our own children's problems at home, our very own flesh and blood, how are you expecting organizations to change?
No, thank you so much for that. You know, one of the examples that I give in sensitization workshops is, and any sensitization is, you know, we say, what are your myths, etc. And one of the things I say is, if you have kids, ask yourself if your child told you they were hearing voices.
Yeah.
If your child told you that they were a trans man or a trans woman. Your child told you that they want to be in a profession that you don't approve of. Right? What feeling it creates in you, and we said you don't have to debrief it here.
Yeah.
But the feeling that it creates in you is a real indication of how deep your subconscious bias is.
Absolutely.
And you need to start working on that. If there is a feeling and it's one of heaviness and it's not pleasant, you need to start work on it.
Precisely.
Because that's when it really drives home.
Yeah.
You know, it's about
Yeah,
the flesh
yeah,
and blood.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I'm going to summarize this for our audience very quickly, and I think I heard some very beautiful snippets. From what I heard from you is biases aside, unconscious bias from others aside, my own estimation of my capability
Yeah.
can be a big bias that I can always be aware of and I can start with. Right.
Yeah.
Dr. Akai, what I heard from you is how we teach. As I'm going through life, what experiences am I gaining to be more educated than I started off to be with? Okay. And what I'm hearing from you is, Rashi, myths aside, be human, check in with each other.
Yeah.
Don't make jokes if you don't understand it or to make light of a situation.
Yeah.
And simply by talking about something, you are making it okay.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
So thank you for that. I want to be respectful of your time. In a sentence or two, anything to the camera, closing messages for us.
I think you go first now.
I think what is most important is empathy for everyone. So it doesn't matter whether you are a manager, you are the junior most person. I think asking people how their day was and being supportive for them is something that all of us can manage at the workspace. So I think I would like everyone to take away that be respectful and be very empathetic to the people around you. Yeah.
I would say that change, no matter how small or big, it starts with that one thought. And I think each one has that one itching thought within us. It's time to really itch now, just get out of it. That thought changes things around you. It's that ripple effect. But you have to get your calling on that thought and speak it out. That is what will bring in change. Nothing else.
I think we need to be proud for what we are, and we are born in a human world. We all of us will be having either one of problems. Let's not the problem eat us, and we need to eat the problem. And if you're assuming it's a problem, it's a problem. If how do you overcome the problem? And let's not think in the context of victimhood. So how do you overcome that? I know it is challenging that we need to build our confidences, our self-love and self-respect. If that is so, we are here together. And let me say with this, judge not, support gender identity. Judge not, support sexual diversity.
It's been an honor hosting the three of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much
Thank
for
you so
having
much.
me.
Thank you.